So once Nationals is kind of over and we're kind of getting to this unification thing, I think a major ban list has to happen. I don't think we can survive a unification without something happening to kind of just level the playing fields a little bit more and give us time to actually adapt. So let's talk about what I would kind of just have neutered or fixed into the format. So without further ado, let's talk about it. So guys, as you can tell, let's talk about card by card and everything like that. And let's be straight honest here. These are a lot of wish list kind of scenarios that I wish would happen, and it might actually help better the game. We're getting to a point where speed is everything again, and we will have adaptability with some of these cards, and I can't wait to see what happens with the adaptability of the players can do with them. But I really want to see what we can. You know, like right off the bat, we can talk about 110 things. First off, let's go over, this is what I kind of think should happen. So we have Bowmon, of course. Don't get me wrong, I know we have BT20 and we're going to get some sort of Bowmon egg. So to be honest with you, if this Bowmon wasn't more than once per turn, the deck would actually be a little bit more fair. If this card was once per turn, the card would be extremely fair. I think the fact that it doesn't have once per turn and this thing can just snowball, discard, snowball, discard, discard. Yes, all the memory in the world can happen, but with Takamazuchi being able to reset you back and basically make it your turn again and you just swing out, I think a little bit of it is this card wasn't designed with Takamazuchi in mind. It was definitely designed for Fenrir Luga, who was going to stop at 3, but then once they designed Takamazuchi, they went like, oh, we didn't think this through, did we? No, you didn't. What should have probably happened was they would just change the playstyle a little bit. You would be discarding, turboing a little bit more and trying to get your pieces. And you could still be a great counter deck because all you have to do is just make sure you had a tamer on board and you brought up your level 5 stack. And then you would just Digivolve with your Bowmon from trash. You know, once you mind linked with the Bowmon, you would be able to bring up and then just go into Takamazuchi that way. And it's not a bad way of handling the deck because I think the other Bowmon definitely does a good job. It just was, I think that's what their game plan was, to use it in that way and keeping this Bowmon strictly for that. But then they didn't really think about BT14 Bowmon when designing Takamazuchi's playstyle. So that led into what we see now. And Takamazuchi is a really strong deck, don't get me wrong. And do I think it's completely fair? No. I think Takamazuchi can really just blow decks out of the water, especially if they can snowball right. And just because the Evolve line does what it does, sometimes it just gets out of hand. Then we have like Greymon X here. This card, I would probably say, can finally come off the restriction list. With so many decks just being able to micromanage resource evolve shenanigans, Greymon X Antibody's on this list for no other reason, just because they don't want Greymon getting out of hand. But to be honest with you, Greymon X Antibody might be the way it gets back into the competitive format comfortably. I think the fact that it's still at 1 at this point in the game, where we have so much more value engines just doing what this card was trying to do from the get-go, is kind of sad. I mean, it's restrictive as heck. And yes, great Black War Greymon was oppressive to go against, but now that we're kind of into a point where basically Black War Greymon is tier 2, even War Greymon's like tier 2 bottom-esque, they're not even like top end anymore of the tier 2 ladder. This is, and they're probably getting closer to tier 3 just because of how strong other decks have become. I think you can finally relieve Greymon X Antibody from the list. I think it's probably the least egregious hit. The deck I really want to talk about, though, is the dog engine. Don't get me wrong, people are going to probably go like, you're crazy, you're nuts, the dog engine shouldn't get hit. I think to develop purple base X Antibody decks and just fix getting players off of these mentality strats, because the Dober X just draws and is efficient by trashing their stuff and just being able to do all their stuff, the stuff they need to, you know, this gaining retail, this one playing a body as long as you have the X Antibody. It's a draw discard. You're going to set yourself up. You have the Gobblies, you have the Ogremon just adding some value there too, but you also have the straight up dog engine just doing what the dogs want to do. And to be honest with you, it's not like I'm saying it's broken beyond prepared, but so many decks rely so heavily on this strat. Now you can play Takamazuchi with the dog engine. You can play Lord Nightmon X with the dog engine. You can play Leviamon X with the dog engine. You play Lilithmon X with the dog engine. You're going to be playing so many decks rely so heavily on this engine that it's becoming more and more apparent that this is now becomes a more of a perfect engine than an end all be all. You know, the fact that scatter mode got removed for this reason alone proves that they might do it again. The dog engine might just get a little bit of a smack on the wrist. The thing is, do you hit Dobermon X or do you hit Cerbermon X? I think it might be Cerberusmon X would be probably the better option of the two. Not to say that there's any clean good options. Most players would probably just say you're being crazy and insane, but I think maybe Cerberusmon X probably be a little bit of a good cleanup. So I think this might be a good idea. And next we're going to talk about is the boy, MirageGaogamon. This card has been a thorn in the sides. JP has now started seeing this thing top, even in current formats. It is proving this deck has long overstayed its welcome. Mirage has Galaxy version and Mirage himself. Both extremely great decks, and they're not going anywhere. The deck is going to do what it wants, and it's going to just say, come at me, boys. You know, this deck has done everything in its power to be a thorn in the side. The fact that this card exists in a nutshell, basically that punishes your opponent for having to get the out of their deck, is ridiculous. And then the fact that they've made so many cards that forces your opponent to draw so you can trigger this thing's ability, it's getting kind of out of hand. And I definitely agree that at some point we have to deal with the problem, right? This is the problem child. You can't hit everything else at this point. This is always going to be a problem child. It will always do. You know, countering it is very hard to do because, again, it bounces the threat. You know, oh, I have a Madoki beta on board. Well, I go into Mirage, I bounce the Madoki, unless you had 2 on board, which even then it doesn't even matter half the time because of how evolve sequences happen. You could remove both very comfortably. If you had 3 out, congratulations, you're finally stopping this thing. 2 is like a pancake breakfast that it just had 2 pancakes and what got more kind of situation. I think at the end of the day, Mirage can definitely go to 1. It's just finally time to put this dog out to pasture like Old Yeller and just end it all. But now you're probably wondering why Hanuman's on the list. Well, to be honest with you, with Koh and Sayo existing and the fact that, you know, you do have Hanuman that is also basically a free restand all the time, basically by its one effect, because it's when Digivolving effect is going to play something out, and then you're going to be able to Digivolve up and then swing in, suck the thing back in, and you're getting at least a free restand out of the deal. This always a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. It will always fulfill its cost, and I don't always like those kind of styles of strats. It's just sometimes really too good for what it should do. You know, Hanuman should definitely be restricted, I think. If you're going to hit, you know, more blue stuff, I think this card is another card that should probably be on players' radars. This thing just, again, you don't really need it in a lot of lists, but it would be nice that Hanuman just goes down to 1. MirageGaogamon definitely going down to 1. But Koh and Sayo is another card that a lot of players are like, you know what, it's time for this thing to go. Galaxy is just a little too strong of an engine. And again, if we're hitting engines, you just don't hit Sayo and Koh. You gotta hit the Cerberus engine because, again, even though Galaxy is kind of restricted to themselves, and they're always going to be, you're gonna eventually have to say, when is enough enough? And I think, you know, you want to get rid of engines that are problem child. So again, Bowmon's an engine by itself. You know, Koh and Sayo is an engine by itself. You know, Cerberusmon, Dobermon engine is a strictly strong engine. You know, it's time to finally get the engines a little bit, bring down the consistency a little bit more, and it opens up the field a bit. You know, another thing we need to talk about, it's the elephant in the room, is if you're hitting these guys, you need to finally hit Imperialdramon one last time. Yes, Imperialdramon might not be doing a lot, but at some point you have to say when's enough against Imperialdramon. So you do have Davis and Ken, and then you do have Return to the Progenitor, Primogenitor. So both are great cards, Davis and Ken and Return. They're always going to be viable cards for Imperialdramon, and a lot of players might say you just hit this thing, bring it down to 1, it gets a little bit more fair. You know, there's also an argument for the Vmon Stingmon as well to be hit, but to be honest with you, I would prefer seeing this card go. This is basically the bread and butter and the heart and soul of the deck. I think if we're going to be neutering stuff, bringing this down to 1 makes it a lot easier to deal with, because again, what gets out of hand real quick is that, you know, you finally answer the board state, but when you finally swing in and you hit 2 Davis and Kens, they're instantly getting right into their Imperialdramon. You can easily negate the XVmon and the Wormmon, the XVmon and the Stingmon combo by just having a Madoki Beta on board. But if they have multiple Davis and Ken, it doesn't really matter because they can bring the memory back. And that's the problem. It's like the source stripping is really strong, but you also gain the ability to gain a memory. So this now brings it back to your turn. And again, you know, Madoki Beta doesn't stop these effects, so that becomes a problem. I think restricting either Davis and Ken or Return of the Primogenitor will definitely help out. I think, again, Return is okay because you can play around it a little bit and force your opponent to get to a point where they can't evolve further, and that's going to be $1 million. You know, also the fact that some decks can just easily do that better than others, you know, matters a heck of a lot. Now, you guys might be wondering why Jack Raid, Gravity Crush, and Blinding Ray are both on the list here. Well, I think it's time to, because like Hammer Spark, I think it's time for bringing these cards down. I think they've been far too long being able to play at higher play sets, higher, you know, Blinding Ray, most lists can play it at 2 comfortably, and that's where they want to be. If you bring it down to 1, you know, you still have to try to find it, but at least it's now not gaining enough memory to matter. Jack Raid at 4 definitely is overtuned. I think Jack Raid coming down to 1 is just vital, because again, right now, this is a way of hitting purple hybrid without actually killing the deck at the moment. I think a small hit with Jack Raid is just vitally strong, because again, what happens? They're just going to loop Jack Raid a little bit, extend out, go Y all the way up, and boom, you're set. And then Gravity Crush. Gravity Crush is used strictly in red hybrid, and this card, I think, would be a way of making sure that they don't just get to OTK you comfortably, because again, these cards affiliate to OTK strats, and just to finally bring them off the board and just bring them down to 1 means you're not consistently seeing these cards, and you know, it's just time. They've had their time in the limelight, but they always seem, once they get back in and they go above 1 to maybe all their copies, they just get really, really strong. You know, Jack Raid is just another antithesis of this, you know? I mean, at the end of the day, I think this would definitely help the meta out, and it can lead to being something good. So guys, what did you think of this video? Let me know down in the comments. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you next one. Peace!